Hey y'all. In this video, we're going to get into creating a split initial V-Carved monogram. Now, as usual, there's an easy way to create one of these, and there's a more difficult way to create one of these. In this video, we're going to get into the easy way, and I'll save the more difficult way for another video. Although I'm using Aspire version 10.019 for this video, this works the same way in VCarve Desktop and VCarve Pro. So let's go ahead and get started by opening a new session of Aspire. And I have my piece of material already laid out here. We'll go into Job Setup so you can see it. It's a single-sided job with a width in X of 14 inches, a height in Y of 14 inches, and the thickness of this material is 3/4 of an inch. I'm setting my Z0 position to the material surface and my XY datum position for the purposes of layout in the center of my material. And we're not going to be doing any 3D modeling in this demonstration, so none of these settings down here matter. We'll click OK, and we have our material size. Now, as I said before, this is an easy project, but it will require us to do a little bit of looking online. And that is, we'll do a search for a split monogram font or a split initial font. You can also look for split letter fonts. I did a Google search, and there are plenty of them out there, some of them for free, some of them require a small fee. And the one I've chosen for this demonstration came from this website up here. She calls herself My Graphic Fairy. And these are free fonts that are free for download. And I'll put a link to her website in the description box below. I have downloaded and installed the Regal Split font with bars, and that's the font I'm going to use for this demonstration. There are others here. There's also a SVG file. There are a couple of other fonts to include a pack of 450 fonts for the Mac people, and various other monogram fonts here. For the purposes of this demonstration, I've used the Regal Split font with bars, the font, not the SVG. The font installs like a regular font on your computer and becomes available for use in other programs besides your CAD/CAM software. The SVG file only works with graphics software that will import or open an SVG file. So that's where I got this one, and this is the one that I'm going to use. I downloaded it and installed it on my computer, so we'll go ahead and we'll start with that. We'll go into my Draw Text tool, let that load all of my fonts. Okay, and we'll select that font. And that was called Regal. So I need to do a search. I'm going to type the letter R to bring it down into the R fonts. And we'll just go down here to Regal Split Font. And there it is. I'll select that. The capital letters are all we're interested in, and I'm just going to use the initial to my last name, which is a capital L. And that places one right here in my material, -2 in X and Y. Well, that's fine. I should have created a height. I should have anchored it to 0, 0. But for purposes of this demonstration, it doesn't really matter. I'll go ahead and close it. I've got it out there. I'll go ahead and I'll align it to the center of my material. Close that. Now I have a 14-inch piece of material here, 14 inches square. So I want to size this up to be pretty big. So with it selected, I'll go into Set Selected Object Size, and I want to make sure my link XY is checked. Then we see that it's a little bit wider than it is tall, so I'm going to choose the bigger of these two measurements, and I'm going to change that to 12.5 inches. 12.5. Then I'll click Apply, and there is our monogram. Okay, now if we take a look at this by zooming in a little bit, we can see there are a few problems with this font, and this is something that you're going to run into when you're using fonts. And that is, we have some overlaps here and some intersections. Fonts are scalable vector graphics, but when you import one, they are still considered text. So when I select this, I get it in the solid pink lines because it is a text object. So what I'll need to do with this before I can fix any of these problems is I need to convert it to curves. And there's two ways I can do this. I can right-click and select Convert to Curves, or I can click off, then reselect. I can come over here under Create Vectors to Convert to Curves. They both do the same thing. Either one, it's 100% your choice. So since I'm right here, I'll click on that, and now my solid pink lines have changed to dashed pink lines. I'll click off to deselect, and now I can come in here and I can fix a few of these overlaps. I'll just grab my trim tool, come along, and trim these where they overlap. I'll zoom in down here and trim that away. We don't have any other overlaps here. Those are pretty close together, but they don't overlap. Okay, now if you are paying attention, you'll see down here that we have another overlap. I'm going to back out of the trim tool for a minute, and I'm going to introduce a new tool for this. What I'm going to do is select all of my artwork here, and I'm going to use the Vector Validator. And we'll find the Vector Validator over here under Edit Objects, in the second row all the way to the right. I'll click on that icon, and I'm going to V-carve this, so I'll go into V-carving mode. That modifies the search criteria for the Vector Validator slightly. It knows that you're going to V-carve this. It looks for things that are really going to impact V-carving. I'll go ahead and click Search Selected. It'll go through and search it. And now we see a bunch of symbols out here. If we look here, we have zero length spans, meaning we don't have any pieces that are identified as separate vectors that have a 0 length. But we do have 4 overlaps and 45 intersections. So we'll need to clean up these intersections and these overlaps. Now what these symbols out here are, this gives us the key to these symbols. If we zoom in, we'll see that some of them have a plus sign. That's an intersection. That's where, I'll zoom in so you can see, that's telling me right here, this vector meets this vector. We'll need to fix that. Then we have overlaps. I'll look for the equal sign, and that's telling me that this vector here overlaps with this vector here. So this must be a separate vector. So the way I'll check for that is I'll click off to deselect, click on it, and we see that it's a separate vector. Well, we don't need that. In fact, we don't want it at all. So I'll just tap the delete key on my keyboard, and it's gone. Now I can zoom back out and see if we have any other overlaps that are similar. Yeah, so we have one right here. So I'll select it, and it's the same as the other one we just got rid of. I'll delete it. Then I'll just kind of look around for other symbols. We've taken care of these two. And we'll now come down here and see we have these intersections. Right now I want to check for the overlaps. That must be down below here. And I don't see any more overlaps. So what we'll do is we'll click off, close the Vector Validator, select, and do it again. Vector Validator, V-carving mode, search selected. I now have 0 overlaps. That was enough to get rid of those 4, and it took care of a few intersections. Now for the intersections, that's a little bit different. We're going to have to come in and decide what we want to do. Like we have, for instance, we have this intersection right here, where this piece comes down and crosses over this piece here. Well, as a font, that doesn't really matter, because remember, fonts were designed to be printed. This was designed to either be filled with ink or laser toner. So in a situation like this, I can click off, select this vector, select it again to go into Move Transform mode, and I will bump up on my up arrow on my keyboard and bump left with the left arrow on my keyboard. Now when I zoom in, we're no longer intersecting this piece. We're also no longer intersecting down here. It's not enough to change the look of the font, but it is enough to remove that intersection. And we'll come down here and we'll take a look. We have more intersections. This here we have just some crossovers. We've got a couple of ways of fixing that. One is we can click off, select that, then we see that this is a separate piece. So we'll just select that and hit delete. And that removes that intersection. Let's go down here and see if that's what this is. Nope, this one is a little bit different. This is not a separate vector. So with it selected, I'll type the letter N to go into node editing mode. And I'll just grab this handle. And I just made that worse, so I'll pull it this direction, just so they no longer cross. See, they no longer cross. Now that took care of that intersection. I'll come down and look at this one. Tap the letter N again to come out of node editing, and we'll see if this is a separate vector. It's not, so I'll type the letter N to go into node editing, and we'll move this one this way, take a look, and we've removed that intersection. So we'll come in and we'll do things like that to get rid of any of these intersections. And take a look at this one here. This is a little bit different case. I'll tap N to come out of node editing, and I'm going to close my Vector Validator. Grab my trim tool, and I'll come in, and I'll trim that away. Then I see where this is going here. I will close my trim tool, select that vector, and I'll just bump it with my cursor right button. Select this one, tap the letter N to go into node editing mode, drag this point down to meet this one, tap N to come out of node editing mode. Now I'll come over here. I have one open vector, I'll join it, it's now closed. So you see it's not connected, but it is close like it's supposed to be. Looking right here, I think I have another one. And this takes a little bit of time. This is going back and forth, selecting all, going into the vector validator, going into VCarve mode, it's search selected, and looking for overlaps and intersections. So I'll go ahead and I'll finish taking care of all these. Then when I'm done, we'll come back and continue on with the project. Okay, with all of that completed, let me select it all one more time. We'll go back in to do the vector validator, search. I have 0 intersections, 0 overlaps, and 0 length spans. So we're set there. Now I'll click off to deselect everything. I'll right click, go to selection, and click select all open vectors. No open vectors in design. So our initial is prepared and ready to VCarve. I'll hold down the Control key and tap the letter A to select them all. And I want to group these. That way I don't accidentally select something out here I don't want to select. With that finished, now I want to add my name here in the center. So I'll go back up to text. And the font that I'm going to use in here, just for me, is called Algerian. Now, the Algerian font, I was hesitant to use this for this demonstration, but I like the looks of it, so that's what I'm going to use. I cannot give you a source for the Algerian font. The Algerian font is trademarked and copywritten, and it has come with Microsoft Office products since, I believe it was Microsoft Office 2002. It may have been earlier. But if you have any Microsoft Office products, Microsoft Word, Excel, Access, any of the Microsoft Office programs, Algerian came with it. There are some other Algerian alternatives out there, but I have not checked them or tested them. I don't know how good, bad, or indifferent they are. I'm going to anchor my text here on the X0, Y0. Normally I don't do things of this nature because it anchors the base of the font on that X0, Y0, and I'm going to want it down here. But we can adjust that after it's done. Also with the Algerian font, capital letters work best, so I'll go into caps lock and I'll type my last name. And I'll close. Now before I do anything else, I'll align the entire word to the center. I'm going to go ahead and click it one more time to go into Move and Transform mode and bring it up and make it a little bit smaller. A little bit smaller here. But before I do a lot of resizing, I need to do some spacing. Because if we look here, between the L and the I and the N, our letters are way too close together. So I'm going to go ahead up here to Edit Text Spacing and Curve. And I'll click on that icon. And when I bring my cursor over, you see when I get between two letters, it changes to a V and an A with a couple of arrowheads pointing towards each other. If I click right now, it's going to move these letters closer together. But if I get in here between two letters, hold down the Shift key, those arrows point away from one another. So when I click, it moves those letters apart. And I'll come over here, still holding down Shift, click, kind of move those apart a little bit. fact, now that I look at it, I'm going to click one more time for each one just to kind of spread them out a little bit. Now on the other side of the coin over here, the A and Y are a little bit too far apart. So I'll go ahead and click that twice to bring them, maybe 3 times, yeah, to bring them closer together. And I'll go once here, and I think I'm going to leave these alone. So that kind of tightens it all up a little bit. So now I need to come back over here and click on selection mode to come out of my adjust my kerning, click off to deselect. I still want to resize a little bit because my letter Y is pretty tall. So go up here to this corner and I'm not holding down shift. I'm just dragging that down a little bit to where it's down inside this space here. And now I will align horizontally. I will not change the vertical alignment. And I think that'll work. This one letter here is a little bit taller than the rest, trying to get an even space here and here. And I think that works out okay. I'll close this. Now I want to just lengthen my text. So I'll come over here to one of these center boxes on the side, hold down Shift, click on that box, and drag my text a little bit longer. Take a look at that and see how that looks. I think that's a little bit better. And click off to deselect. And now, believe it or not, we're ready to calculate some toolpaths. So, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select my text, come over here into the Toolpath tab, and I'm going to select VCarve. I like to cut these to a flat depth of no more than 100 thou, so not quite 1/8 of an inch deep. Sometimes I'll go shallower, say 0.08, but more often than not, I want to cut to a flat depth of 0.1. My start depth will be 0, because I'm starting from the surface of my material, and I'm going to use a 90-degree V-bit. Now, I happen to know from using this font that it will, using the 90-degree V-bit, none of these in here are big enough to use an 1/8 inch end mill or any kind of a clearance tool, so I'll just go ahead and turn that off. And I'm going to call this VCarve name. Oops, I forgot it was in caps lock. I do that just about every video that I use the caps lock on. And we'll calculate. I'll go ahead and change the toolpath color to black so that you can see it. And we'll preview that toolpath. And there we go. Then I'll come back over into my 2D view, close my preview window. Then I'll select this group and we'll V-carve it. Same settings. Flat depth of 0.1. I'm using a 90-degree V-bit. This time, because I have these larger areas here, I am going to use a 1/8 inch end mill as a clearance tool. I'm going to ramp in the plunge moves over a distance of, let's see, for an 1/8 inch bit, I will make it 0.5. So it'll plunge in to the 0.1 over a distance of a 1/2 inch. And we'll call this VCarve Initial. Calculate. And there are my two toolpaths. One of them using the V-bit and the other using the 1/8 inch end mill. So I'll select this one, come up and change my toolpath color to black. Then I'll select this one and change my tool color to black. Let me clear up a little bit of a misunderstanding by a couple of folks. These check marks do not select the toolpath. They make the toolpath visible out here and visible to the preview window. If I uncheck that toolpath there, we no longer see the toolpath out here. Uncheck that, we no longer see this toolpath out here. All the check mark does is make it visible. Clicking on the name, you see how it's now blue. That is a selected toolpath. So to select a toolpath, you have to click on the title. To make a toolpath visible, you put a check mark in the box. So, just to clear that up. So, we're going to start with the clearance toolpath, which uses a 1/8 inch end mill. We'll preview that. And that has milled away everything that it can, that it's big enough to get into. Then we'll go to the V-Carve toolpath that uses the V-bit. Preview that one. And that fills in all of the details that are too small for that 1/8 inch end mill to do. And there's our project. Believe it or not, even using that vector validator, this is the simpler, easier way to do this. Earlier I said I prefer to use the fonts because it makes them available to other programs. You can, however, go back to this website and download the SVG. Modify that once and then save it so that the SVG file has all of these changes that we made out here done one time. So my point in this is, if you are going to only use this split initial font for this type of work within VCarve or another CAD/CAM software, it might benefit you to go ahead and download the SVG format. Then when you need to make a modification like we did, all of those intersections, all of those overlaps, you do it once and save it. By using the font like I am, if I go to create another sign using this font, I'm going to have to go back through and make all these modifications again. Now, personally, I don't do this for a living, so it's a one-time use thing for me. But if you plan on using this kind of thing quite often, it might be to your benefit to use the SVG file and make the modification one time only. So earlier on I said that there was an easy way and a difficult way. Believe it or not, this is the easy way. There is a more difficult way that will create this V-Carved Monogram. But that's for another day. That's for another video. Don't forget, today at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session where we'll discuss anything that I covered in this video, including making these patterns from scratch using fonts as vector graphics, the vector validator tool, or anything else that I demonstrated in this video. So again, that's noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, today, right here on my YouTube channel. And I'll put a link to that live Q&A down in the description box of this video. So I hope to see you this afternoon. I hope you got something out of this video. And if you did, I do hope you'll give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow along with my further CNC adventures, or even more of these tutorials, I do hope you'll subscribe to my channel. But whether you subscribe to my channel or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.